Welcome back to the kitchen. So yes, Thanksgiving is around the corner. In America, plenty of people wants to cook special things, and I've digged up something special for you right here, and this is called the Coulibiac de saumon, a salmon Coulibiac, which is a charcuterie item where salmon is poached, flaked, mixed with mushroom, shallots, eggs and other ingredients, and encased in a roll of pure butter puff pastry. There's no mold required. We're gonna work straight on the sheet in there. It's super easy and it looks absolutely impressive. And if you're looking for something special, that is the ticket. And talking about tickets, Thanksgiving and other things, for the very first time, for Black Friday, we decided to give a 20% off to all the courses on the site using that coupon code FCA Black Friday, 1 week only. You go on the website, link on the video description, and you're going to be able to purchase any of the courses at 20% off. So if you ever wanted to test the course, try the course, buy one of the more meaty course, like the beginner course that we have, that is huge, it's going to take you several months to complete, now this is the time, okay? So 2 things in here, coupon codes, and now the special recipe for Thanksgiving. Let's go. And now let's jump right in. So for the mise en place, very simple. What do we need? 2 eggs, a bit of rice, couscous, mushrooms. The mushroom have to be sliced, like thinly sliced. Shallots, they have to be sliced as well. And the salmon fillet, skin off. We're going to be poaching the salmon in the courbouillon, water, salt, thyme, bay leaf, and you can use half a glass of white wine. This is Noyer Prat, which is the French white vermouth instead. So on the stove, you're going to start by doing first, we need hard-boiled eggs. So I'm going to do a 9 minutes count for these ones. 2 hard-boiled eggs in there. Next thing, poaching the salmon. Do you know how easy it is to poach salmon? It's absolutely not funny. You take boiling water. I'm going to put some salt in here. I'm going to put some thyme, 2 bay leaf, and then I'm going to have, you can have the wine. I'm using the Noyer Prat in here. That's simply to make the so-called courbouillon. Okay? So I'm just going to bring this to the boil. What I'm going to add as a little personal touch, by the way, maybe some shallots in there. Up. And that's about it. And I'm going to show you the technique used by the Roux brothers, which is one of the easiest there is and foolproof to have the perfectly cooked salmon, a perfectly poached salmon every time. So technique from the Roux brothers, very simple. You put your aromatics in here. You bring this to the boil, you leave to boil for 1 or 2 minutes to release the flavor, and then what you're gonna do? You're gonna turn the heat off. No more boiling. I'm taking here my little paprika powder that I had, the Hungarian paprika. This is the special touch. So that's normally not part of a courbouillon, but this is for that very special concoction in here. And from here, all what you do, you take your salmon skin off, putting it in there, and you don't put the heat back on. I'm gonna leave this to cook gently on its own for about 5 to 6 minutes, and that's it. I've left my salmon for 5 minutes, and now I'm gonna take it out of the water and show you the result. As soon as my salmon is out, what you're gonna do, you're gonna scoop off some of the cooking juices that we've used, put this in a little container or baking dish like that. You mix that with cold water, so you stop the cooking, and we're gonna keep the salmon here. It's going to continue slightly to cook while we're preparing the rest of the preparation. Once the eggs and the salmon are ready, and we can move on and continue by cooking the rice and the salmon. So the rice, we're going to just boil it until tender. So I'm leaving you to do this. You know how to boil rice. But the couscous is perhaps something you don't use very often. It originates from northern Africa. It's used a lot in France, in Morocco and Algeria, and throughout France. We've got the couscous is an actual dish. But in other countries, you refer to the couscous as this. This is the grain. This is a durum wheat kind of semolina. So there's little grains, and you get different size you can buy. This is the fine one. In France, we use the middle-sized grain, but it's a super versatile thing. You can use in all kinds of preparation on its own as a side, and you're going to see here we're going to be using it, and it's really, really easy to prepare. So here, I've got about 50 grams of my couscous, and I'm going to have about 75 grams of water. So all what you need to do is take water, put a bit of salt. I'm going to add some herbs. This is optional. Okay, I'm going to add perhaps a hint of black pepper. I'm going to bring this to the boil and then pour that over and leave it to sit. I typically like to use a larger bowl like this, but my water is boiling. I'm going to immediately pour that over. Mix that in. And then you're going to leave this to sit for about 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you take a little fork like this, and we're going to do what's called égrener. You kind of detach all the grains, and like magic, you can see you get that really nice texture, just like this, and that's going to be the base we're going to be using for our coulibiac. And now for the final garnish, the shallots and the mushroom. After checking in the Larousse Gastronomique for that recipe, I've just realized that it says to chop the mushroom and not slice them, and then cook them with shallot and butter, which tell me with the culinary standards that when you do that, you're creating a duxelle of mushroom, and that is, I think, the original intention for that recipe. So we're going to be now, slight correction, chopping thinly all the shallots, chopping all the mushrooms in here, and I'm going to get some parsley as well to make the real duxelle, because I think that's going to add a nice touch of flavor. So what is the duxelle? We start with the butter. We're going to be melting it, then cooking the shallots, then add the mushrooms, cook them as well, and then add some parsley. That's it. Don't use a too high heat, because we need to gently cook these shallots first. Very important to cook the shallot properly, and maybe for a good 5 minutes on low heat before we cook the rest. Shallots are cooked. I'm going to put all the mushrooms, mix well, and then add the rest. And then we can raise the heat on here, and don't worry, mushrooms, they're going to turn into nothing, even though it looks like a lot here. I'm going to raise my heat. We're going to cook this. And your worst enemy in this scenario is moisture. Any charcuterie item where you're trying to encase any ingredients into pastry, you run the risk of having too much moisture. If any of the ingredients, like a mushroom that is sliced too thick, is not properly cooked, it's going to start to rend the juices. The juice is going to flow down, goes into your pastry, start to make holes, and perhaps your whole thing could just fall apart. And I think this is why in that scenario they're using a duxelle, which is a dry mixture of mushrooms, so no risk of having any juices coming out. So we're done. We've got all the ingredients, and now we're ready to assemble. Now the assembly is the point where you have to be very, very careful. First off, make sure that everything is cold. The couscous, the right, well drained, no excess water, no water in here. We're gonna have to flake the salmon, quarter the eggs, okay? So you got everything ready before you assemble. The pastry is the difficult bit here. We've now left the stove, and we were a cook a minute ago. Now we have to transform ourselves and think and act like a baker. And this is totally different. So the first thing we're gonna do is to preheat our oven at 200 degrees Celsius. I've got 2 baking sheets ready here, and I've got my roll of pastry. Your biggest enemy when you work with pastry, even in the professional world, is temperature. As soon as it's out of the fridge, out of the freezer, it's gonna start to get soft. If it's soft, you can't work with it, you can't cut it, you can't arrange, you can't decorate, you can't do nothing. It's gonna be a disaster, you're gonna have holes, things are gonna fail. So we need to have this always cold as much as we can. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna first unroll this, and we're gonna cut the 2 pieces of pastry we need. One for the bottom, one for the top. The piece at the bottom has to be smaller than the one from the top. So I've unrolled my puff pastry, and I've cut a smaller piece for the bottom here, and a larger piece for the top. Now just time for me to just unpack that pastry. Look at this. Look how soft that is already. That is just a few minutes of unpacking, unrolling, and taking the time to cut. My pastry here, look at this. It's almost unworkable. If I lift it, everything's gonna fall apart. So once you cut, we're gonna do what it's always necessary to do, is to cool down this. I'm putting this straight back into the freezer, making sure it's gonna be nice and cold, and it's gonna give us ample time to plan, and when you take it out, we're gonna be stacking the whole thing. Now, when your pastry is cooling down, it is time to create what I call the workshop, and this is something we're doing in our charcuterie course a lot. So if you like that sort of things, grab the 20% discount, go on the site, get the charcuterie course. There's tons of good stuff on there. So the workshop is the place we're going to be working. We're going to be assembling the pâté. Okay, we've got all the ingredients. I've flaked the salmon. I've got all the tools I need. I've got egg wash on here, so an egg yolk with some water to brush the top of the pâté and make some decoration. I've got my pastry brush. I've got a spatula to arrange things. Everything is there. We also need a plan of action. So we're going to have a piece of pastry, and what we need to do, the goal is to create layers of rice, mushroom, salmon, semolina, and then the eggs on top of each other, but not all the way to the edges of the pastry. Okay, we're going to keep a border of at least 2 centimeters, of at least 1 and 1.5 inch all around, so we can fold the pastry back on the inside. It's extremely important to have that plan of action and not be in front of your pastry is going to get hot and think, oh, what am I doing again? And trying to look at the recipe, because everything's going to be a disaster. You need to know what's going to happen before you start. So I won't have too much time to explain too much things when we started. So this is the workshop. When the dough is ready, we're going to hit the road and get layering. And here we are. My pastry is out. So I'm going to start and I will do the rest off camera. But just to give you the idea of what I've said, okay, we're going to start first by the layer of rice. And we're going to leave a border. And that's going to give us the base we can work with. So that's my layer of rice. I'm going to clean everything, make sure you don't have anything on the sides. And I'm going to go ahead and add the salmon. So salmon, I'll do a little bit to show you here. Same thing, me flaking around. Little pieces. I may have a little too much on here. Just a little layer. And I'm going to keep on going with the rest of the ingredients. The last piece of the puzzle is the egg. Now because the layers are quite high already, and I don't want to get too high because the higher you go, the most difficult it is to close properly. I'm going to be slicing the eggs on here with an egg slicer and just adding slices flat on top. The eggs have been placed, and by the way, let me not scare you with all this stuff. It's a bit longish, but it's not hard. It's just precaution to make sure it works on your side. Use your paintbrush to make sure there's no grains. And if there is any hair from the brush falling, make sure you look like a hawk to remove them, because pastry brushes do that. They always do this. And now, all what we're going to do, before we put the top, is to start to fold. You see this, why we had these little edges? We're going to kind of fold this back as much as we can on the inside. See, I'm folding it like that. And I'm going to go around, when my pastry is soft enough, towards the inside. So we have a bit of a casing going on here. And that's all the intention. Now once you finish, this is what you should have. You've got the edges, it's making a parcel, and it's going all towards the inside. Okay, so same on the other side. I've got the same thing on here. It's all going towards the inside. This is the lower casing. What we're going to do now is take this other piece of pastry and place it on top so that it totally seals and prevents anything from escaping. But in the meantime, of course, what I'm going to do is put this back into my freezer so it stays cold. For the final step, I'm taking some water and I'm going to moisten very lightly the edges of my pastry here to make sure it seals properly with the other piece. So let me grab my other piece of pastry, and what we're going to do, we're going to put this on top and make sure first everything fuses. So you go around very neatly. And you're going to be making your little parcel, your little package. It's nice and neat, nice and fused, so that nothing is going to escape. And then we're going to cut and decorate. As you can see, nothing complicated. When you got these flat parts like this, all what we're going to do is some trimming. So we're going to be nice and neat. Don't go too close. I'm just going to go around and I'm going to slice all these extra bits, but not much. Huh? And just a little trimming, and that's going to further seal everything. Huh? Once you're done, you take the back of your knife, and typically you're going to be making these margaritas. I'm always making this. This is the simple way. You can go more complicated, but I always like to do that little simple method, going around and sealing everything. Once you're done, it's time for the egg wash. So all around, very gently, you're brushing your creation. So you see, nice and shiny. The typical thing you have to do when you're making a pâté, you seal. One layer of egg wash, you refrigerate or in the freezer, then you decorate, then another egg wash, and then we cook. Now for the decoration, if you want, you can use offcut of puff pastry and put them on top and make, shapes like this, like that regal thing. But typically what I do, I take the back of a knife and all I do is like this kind of, like the tree branch kind of thing. So you would go and you start with like a tree branch, and then we're gonna make leaves. See, up. A leaf on here, a leaf on there, but do not press too hard with the back of your knife. You don't want to pierce the pastry, be always very gentle. Okay, some leaves on here. So you got the idea? Some decoration like this, we get some leaf on the side, and then you put your final piece or your final layer of egg wash. So don't forget to do the egg wash on the piece. If you use extra piece of puff pastry, what you can do, make sure you cover them with egg wash, so they look nice. But for the rest, one last layer, and then we're done. Now, if you want to do this ahead of time, before you add the egg wash, you can actually leave this in the fridge until you're ready to decorate and serve it. So you can make it in advance, it's not a problem. Ideally, if you want, you're going to put this in the freezer another 10-15 minutes before putting it in the oven. You're going to cook this for 30 minutes. something like this. There's a lot of pastry in there at 200 degrees Celsius, fan forced on. It's been 30 minutes and the Coulibiac is out of the oven, and this is how it looks like. So these are the kind of decoration that I put on top. You see how they look like? Even that one here. That's how it can look like if you start to stick things on. So we're gonna leave it to cool a little bit, really, and then we're just gonna cut it open. And now the moment we've all been waiting for, it is the cutting. So we've got the decoration, but I've got no idea how it's gonna be looking inside. So I'm taking a long serrated knife on here, and I'm gonna avoid damaging that little decoration. I'm gonna try to make a cut just right here. Ooh, that is very soft, very fragile. Oh. And there we have the Coulibiac. I am glad to see that the rigorous layering that we've done has paid off, and we can clearly see the rice, the salmon, the duck-self mushroom, the couscous, and then the egg, and then the pastry. And you can see it's just about cooked, and that's all you need. The best thing about this is that you can serve it warm. So as soon as it's ready, pretty much you can slice open and serve. What's interesting is eating that specialty, because it is meant to be eaten with a sauce. The Larousse Gastronomique preconize a melted butter called a beurre fondu. I think a beurre blanc would work, but what I'm gonna do, and try to stay with the tradition, is to make a garlic and herb butter. So before we dig in, I've made a beurre fondu, flavored with herbs, but the beurre fondu is actually a butter that is just about melted. All right, so it goes from solid to melted, and it's not cooked in the pan, okay? So if I've got some of it here, I'm gonna drizzle it on the side. You're gonna see still have that kind of yellowish kind of color, and I can decorate my plate. I'll be perfectly honest, I've got no idea how to attack this. I'll just cut a piece on a bit of the salmon, a bit of everything. It's kind of hard to grab. I'm tempted to use my hand in there almost. Mushroom, salmon. I love the pastry with that garlic butter. It's really indulgent. You must not be on a diet for that. But if you're not on a diet and you want to indulge, that's perfect. And now I'm going to go and try to cut the big thing. So that's the hard one, because I'm going to destroy the whole thing. Okay, I'm breaking it apart. Sorry, it doesn't look like anything, but I'm going to try to grab this, put the whole layer, and up. It's well balanced. Huh? You can really feel the salmon, you can really feel the mushrooms, and what I thought would be really a bit dryish, like the rice and the couscous on top, no, it really kind of blends in with the butter, kind of adds a little texture in there, and really complements the whole thing. It's actually, it really works, beautiful. Last bite. Oh. And there we have it, mission accomplished. We've actually crafted the Coulibiac from scratch, we've tasted it, and we even added the beurre fondu, this one with the garlic and parsley, but what a surprise. It is absolutely beautiful and something that is really gonna impress if you want to serve this for Thanksgiving. Now, it's been a bit longish, that video, with all the steps, because I wanted to give you a taste of the kind of details we give in the course, but we go further than that. So remember, the coupon we have, 20%, do not miss out. I would recommend definitely the charcuterie course if you like that kind of stuff like we've done in the video. Otherwise, my top 3 would be go for the beginner course if you want to learn the basic. If you're advanced, go for the sauce course, and charcuterie, definitely my number 3. So much value in this 3 course. But that's it. I hope you're gonna have a great time for your Thanksgiving dinner, and lots of good food, lots of good time, lots of wine. And for me, I will see you next time for another video on the French Cooking Academy. Take care all, bye bye.
My appetite.